formative assessment that might be given in a high school algebra class. This PLC has already identified the 4 essential skills that they want students to be able to demonstrate, and students will be assessed along these proficiency scales. In this video, we'll see how to use the add-on SkillGrouper to provide focused intervention to students in response to this CFA before the upcoming summative. To get started, open a new Google Sheet and click the SkillGrouper add-on icon on the right-hand side panel. It may be hidden, so you might have to click this arrow to show it. Now we're going to give our assessment a title. Because this assessment is about inequalities, that's exactly what we'll title it, and we'll click Create. In just a few seconds, a new template sheet will appear for us to start entering our rosters and our scores into. Perfect. Now I can see that this is configured for 3 skills, but the assessment has 4 skills. We're going to fix that by clicking the Change Assessment Categories button in the add-on. Here we'll be able to select not just that there are 4 skills, but we'll also get to say what structure the grades are in. We're not doing points, we're not doing percents, we're using a proficiency scale. So we'll select that and click Change. The sheet will automatically update itself, and once the add-on returns to the main menu, we're ready to continue editing. Perfect. SkillGrouper added drop-downs for inputting individual scores, and it automatically suggested a couple different grade levels. If these are different than the words that your school district uses, you are welcome to come over to this section on the left-hand side and change the wording. Or maybe you're a district that uses numbers, you can use numbers instead, and whatever you type over here will automatically update in this drop-down. Okay, teachers have all inputted their rosters into the sheet, and we're ready to give the assessment and start inputting scores. The categories for these 4 skills are sentences, solving, number lines, and interval notation. So I'll just title those skills here by editing the sheet directly. We've got sentences, solving, number lines, and interval notation. To enter scores, you can click the drop-down and select the score that the student got on each skill. If this is a little slow, you can type the first letter of their score and then hit the Tab key to advance to the next skill. Once you've reached the end of the student's list, you can hit the Enter key to advance to the next student. Using these shortcuts, Tab and Enter, you are able to very quickly enter the scores for all of your students, especially if you're copying them from a score sheet. Every teacher has now given the assessment and input their scores, so we're ready to have a PLC team meeting to discuss how the CFA went. In the Step 2 section of the sheet, we can see the summary of how students did, sorted by class and by skill. Let's talk about what we see here. We can see that all students took the assessment, but only 20% of students were fully proficient. So it's a good thing that we're providing focused intervention before the upcoming summative. The sentences skill overall went pretty well. More than 80% of students showed proficiency. On the contrary, interval notation did not go super well. Only 31% of students were proficient. So this can inform that we need to address how this skill is being taught, change it for future years, and potentially add some reteaching to all of our classes. I'm going to check all of these boxes to confirm that all of these classes are going to reteach this skill in class. Our team's going to come up with an activity and deliver it to the full group. Now for number lines, this is a little more complicated. Looks like some classes had less than 80% of students achieve proficiency, and some classes had more than 80%. It looks like Clark's classes did very well, and it looks like Albertson's classes struggled a little bit. So this sheet can inform a discussion where Clark shares their instructional strategies with Albertson on how they taught number lines. Now that they've had that discussion, Albertson decides that they're going to reteach number lines to their whole class. We can also see that Bennett's second hour looks to be struggling overall. Only 2 out of 28 students were fully proficient. This might mean that we just need to slow this class down a day and have an extra day of practice. It might also inform that a math interventionist or additional support person could come into that hour just to see what's going on. The spaces that are highlighted in red are just suggestions. This is SkillGrouper saying, according to the 80%, 20%, 5% model, this is a candidate for Tier 1 universal reinstruction. But you don't have to check this box, and these students will not receive Tier 1 universal reinstruction. In that case, these students are going to receive Tier 2 intervention. To begin the Tier 2 intervention process, click the Create Intervention Groups button in the SkillGrouper add-on. You can structure your Tier 2 groups in multiple different ways, depending on when your school's schedule allows for meeting with small groups of students. If you have a separate time, like a lunch and learn or an ASR, where you could pool all students from all hours, you can select this setting, share all students for flex time intervention. Then click Next. SkillGrouper will attempt to identify the appropriate number of groups based on how many teachers there are. But if you have additional support personnel who are able to hold their own groups, you can modify this to whatever number you want. The maximum number of students in each group, again, you can choose. If students didn't take the assessment, you can choose to have a group for students to just take the assessment they were absent for. And then you can click Confirm, and SkillGrouper will automatically create these Tier 2 groups. Looks like we have one group focusing on inequalities from sentences, a second group on inequalities from sentences, and a third group on solving. Now, these groups are all at capacity. I said I could only handle 3 groups of 10 students each, and that wasn't enough. There are 14 students over here who need Tier 2 intervention, but aren't getting it. And that would be a lot of students to try and jam into these 3 existing groups. So maybe it would be better to rerun Create Intervention Groups. But this time, instead of choosing 3 groups, we choose 5. Looks like we need another group for solving and another group for number lines. So I'm going to click Next, and this time I'll select 6 groups. Now we'll just deliver this over 2 days instead of over 1 day. Now we can see we have up to 6 groups of up to 10 students each. We have a number line group, sentences, another one for sentences, a group for solving, and another group for solving. That's only 5 groups. You said you could do 6, but SkillGrouper only needed 5. So now you can use the data over here to identify which teacher should teach which of these groups. If Clark did really well teaching number lines, Clark should probably be the person running this Tier 2 group. Once you've divvied up all these groups, you can deliver them in your flex time. If you have an extra group, like we said we could handle 6, but we only made 5, what could that extra person do? Over here in step 4, we can see the list of all students who achieved full proficiency, and these students could receive some sort of enrichment or extension activity. Let's say that your school doesn't have a flex time for pooling students across hours. Instead, your PLC team might choose to share students within the same hour. So for example, Albertson's first hour and Clark's first hour would pool their 47 kids during some shared activity. Now, all of the students, including the ones who aren't below proficient, will need to be somewhere. So in order to figure out where those proficient students will go, you can select to either omit them from groups and they can just stay in their original classroom, Or you can disperse them across groups, and SkillGrouper will try to put them in the group that they scored lower on, even if they were already proficient. Now, the maximum number of students in each group, because we have up to 28 students in a class, we'll probably have to say up to 28 students per group. Now, SkillGrouper will automatically predict, based on the number of sections in each hour, how many groups that you want in each hour. But you can, of course, customize these numbers however you like. Click Confirm once you're ready, and SkillGrouper will attempt to create your intervention groups. Looks great. First hour created 2 groups that are 23 and 23. Second hour created 2 groups that are 23 and 23. Fifth hour created 3 groups that are 23, 23, and 23. All of these groups have a skill to have students work on, and there are also some fully proficient students scattered in there, so they can work on some differentiated independent activity while the students who really need the attention can be up in the front with a teacher. We can see that one student got left out. Now, if you have this happen, you can very easily just say, oh, this student is in first hour, they're below proficient on number lines, they were proficient on these 2 skills, so we can just put them in that sentences group because they were a little lower on sentences than they were on solving. So I'll go to this dropdown, say I want them in the first hour group for sentences, and then I'll move them over by clicking Update Group Changes. This will refresh the sheet, and now we can see that Mira is gone from the ungrouped students. She's down here. She's member number 24 of the first hour sentences group. You'll also notice that some of these skills have scores that are crossed out. These are crossed out because that student already received Tier 1 universal reinstruction on that skill. That's not to say they wouldn't also benefit from Tier 2, but if they've already received Tier 1 universal reinstruction, they're not the priority. The priority is the students that haven't received Tier 1 that need to be targeted by Tier 2. There may also be situations where you don't want to share students across classes in your PLC team. Maybe classes are a couple days ahead or behind of each other, or maybe there are other logistical reasons that it's easier to just keep kids in their original rooms. In that situation, you can select to keep each class separate and click Next. I also recommend, while we're here, that because we're keeping each class separate and we're going to have the teacher intervene with small groups one at a time while students are working on a big activity independently, the teacher's pulling over small groups that need it, they might want to pull over a student multiple times. So you might want to place a student in multiple groups, one for each skill they were below proficient on. We'll click Next, we'll click Confirm. Any data that's already in the Tier 2 section will be overwritten, and we can see new groups appear. This is separated by teacher and by hour to inform what small groups teachers should be pulling aside during class. In Albertson's first hour, he will get the full class started on an independent activity, then pull these 2 students over to work on forming inequalities from sentences. Then, Albertson will pull over these 2 students to work on solving. Notice that Alani is getting pulled 2 times because they need help on both of these skills. They are not being pulled for working on number lines or working on interval notation because their class received Tier 1 universal reinstruction on those skills. So, in other words, the reteach is not for a small group, but for the entire group. This is separated by teacher and by hour to inform small group reinstruction.